Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Whether you're listening here in the Cayman Islands or if you're listening via the web overseas, and I'm made to understand that our streaming audio is now working, so everyone is hearing us on Friday. They were hearing us loud and clear over in New York and Houston and everywhere else. So we're glad to have you guys back on board as well. So whether or not you're listening here in the Cayman Islands or listening via the web overseas, I need not remind you that For the Record is a show produced by Radio Cayman, its management and its staff. That same management and staff that the Ernst & Young report talks about and recommends that they be privatized. And of course, if that happens, you'll never see that management and staff around again. After that, you'll see new faces with new accents probably, if that were to ever happen. So our very competent and capable staff and management here in Radio Cayman has designed this show specifically for you. And it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. Of course, I am your host, Orit Connor, and if I sound a little hyped up this morning, it's probably because I rode over 125 miles yesterday with my friends, the Daybreakers, getting ready for the ride, Kingston to the Grill in October. And for the first time, I drank some noon energy, so that probably is still giving me the energy today as well. But I'm your host, and we will have in the studio with us this morning the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, the Premier of the Cayman Islands, and we'll be talking about several issues as well. Of course, For the Record is brought to you on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. And I remind you that our phone lines are always open and we give priority to our callers. So what we normally do is we allow the person who has the mic at that point in time to finish their train of thought. That's a tongue twister. Their train of thought. And after they have concluded that, then we go straight to the phone lines because you are our most important asset here. You, the listeners. So, we take your calls right away as well. But Susan is always waiting on the other end of the phone to take your calls. And, of course, we can be reached on 1-800-534-8255, which is a toll-free number. You can also reach us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. You can also, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, email us at fortherecord, one word, fortherecord at candw.ky. So today we're going to have the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands, on with us. Of course, we cannot forget our faithful and dedicated sponsors, committed sponsors. And For the Record is brought to you by Champion House Restaurant 2 and Champion House Cafe. Champion House Restaurant 2 is located on Eastern Avenue and Champion House Cafe at 1 Butterfield Place, formerly Comart. Champion House, of course, is a family-oriented restaurant where locals, and I always say others, dine as well. And let us not forget our other big sponsor. For the Record is brought to you by the Auto Spa on Godfrey Nixon Way. You can stop by Radio Cayman or the Auto Spa and ask for your $5 savings coupon for your next full-service wash. So those are our sponsors, and we always give a shout out to Paradise Coffee as well for their Keurig coffee and tea machine. We find that very accommodating for our guests as well as for the staff in Radio Cayman as well. They work on a shoestring budget here, even though they produce excellent programs, excellent shows. But, they have tightened their belt, as well, and has always had a tight belt. Norma, she controls that purse string and, only spends it when it is absolutely necessary. Let's take a look at the headlines. Caymanian Compass. Today, dive community tackles coral reef damage. Excellent for them to address that issue. Of course, our marine environment in the Cayman Islands is extremely important to them as well as to us, because that is where the dive community either enjoy the diving or they make a living from it as well. The other article, law changes to address firings and severance pay. The minister hasn't provided a whole lot of detail on that, but has said that it will be coming. Government pushes with data protection, and I'll tie that in with what I will also mention here, and we'll be talking about with the Premier as well. This is Right to Know Week, celebrating Right to Know and the introduction of our Freedom of Information Law, which took place in 2007. So we will be talking about that as well. And of course, I always like to look at the Compass's editorial, and it's entitled Going Out of Business, Sale Needed Now for Government. And of course, it talks about the various some of the recommendations again that were made by the Ernst & Young report. They also go on to compare some salaries in the public sector, especially those persons who head up or posts that head up the statutory authorities and the government companies, and talk about what the port director earns, what the airport CEO earns, also what the Cayman Airways CEO earns. Of course, I was looking in the ads as well, not looking for a job, but just looking at them because I had other comments to make in relation to whether or not these ads that are placed in the newspapers in relation to vacancies, whether or not they relate to actual vacancies or they're really being put in there as a requirement of the immigration work permit boards to advertise posts that are either up for renewal or they're seeking the grant of a work permit, for that. And if most of those are the cases, then I even see one in there, for instance, for Pinnacle, where they're asking for some sort of rep. Let me see if I can find that article, that ad. So, yeah, they're asking for print media sales representative, and they're offering $26,000 to $36,000 annually, dependent on experience and qualifications. Plus, they give commissions, incentives, and statutory benefits as required by law. Now, when I look at those figures, I would venture to say that those salaries are probably around the starting salary of a police constable in the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service. So when we look at the private sector, some of them aren't necessarily as competitive as they should be as far as salaries are concerned, and offering strong salaries as well. I also saw an ad in there for an attorney at law starting at $250,000. That's $250,000 US per year. Take that and compare that to what Crown Councils are earning in the Cayman Islands government. No comparison whatsoever. So when the Caymanian Compass is going to compare the salaries that some government officials get, they should give an equal comparison in terms of what takes place in the private sector as well, because they seem to think that government employees are somewhat overpaid. Not many, if any, of them are overpaid. And when we look at these CEO positions, they're all held by Caymanians. Do we want to begrudge them the ability to earn a proper salary? Remember, if you don't pay people proper salaries, then you run the risk of them embarking on other ventures to make up their salaries. So, I say that for what it is worth. So those are a few headlines and the Compass's editorial as well. I also want to say that I had the distinct opportunity to stop by to a great function on Saturday night, and that was a Crew Road reunion that was organized by Miss Karen Thompson, I think Irma Arch or Irma Chirinos, and her sisters, Barbara Connolly. I don't want to call too many names because I know I'm going to miss a lot. Carrie Nixon was the MC. And believe it or not, I also partially grew up in Crew Road myself. Used to stay up by the Dixons with my sisters, right up there by the Dip, if you knew where the Dip was, near to Ross Coe's house. And so I was, an invitation was extended to me. I had many experiences in Crew Road. I remember Kern Gomez and I were talking at one of the display tables where they had a lot of old Caymanian artifacts there. And we were talking about marbles and looking at marbles, and I remember I was the marble expert, and I used to, when I rode up on Saturdays to go to Crew Road to take the groceries for the Dixons, I'd stop and play marbles. And of course, if I won the marbles, then I had to sneak back to get back into town. I had to try to sneak back through Crew Road, or otherwise I'd get pelted or they'd gang up on me. But that was an excellent evening, and I would say that many other communities in the Cayman Islands should seek to do that so that they can relive and their heritage, bring it out, let people see what the experiences was like. And of course, the Honorable Premier was there as well. So Premier, good morning. How did you enjoy Saturday evening?
Good morning, Ocean. Good morning to the listening public. It was an absolutely wonderful evening. I'd had a very busy day and was feeling a bit weary, but when I got there, all the tiredness disappeared, and I really got into the swing of things. Of course, I grew up right across the road from Karen Ryan. You call her Karen Thompson, but her name is Karen Ryan.
Karen Ryan, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Wilford and Miss Toy daughter. Mm-hmm. I grew up right across the road from there, so that was really my old stomping ground. So it was good to see so many of the people I grew up with, but also some of the older heads were there, which brought back a lot of memories. And then the slideshow, I saw faces that I'd forgotten. You think your memory gets hazy sometimes, especially when there are persons from your childhood. You remember the names and what they did, but the precise features, had got a bit hazy in my mind. And I saw these slideshows with all of these old photos of the older folk, and it was really nostalgic. It was a wonderful evening, and the display of Mr. Ashburn's store or Crew Road store, as it was called, and old Mark Thompson filling station, and the slideshows from those that brought back some really powerful memories from my childhood.
Yeah, I went away with a pocket full of Paradise Plums and Sugar Daddies, two boxes of what do you call them again? I'll soon remember. But and then they had the cheese and the cheese.
Yeah, the daisy. What's it called again? The daisy red, I believe it is, the cheddar cheese. That came wrapped in this. There's a wax, in the red wax.
Yeah, and Cracker Jack. That's what I was trying to remember. The Cracker Jack. It really brought back memories.
And the bazooka bubble gum, and that sort of stuff.
And then Seneca riding around on the bicycle.
The caravans and slingshots and old
really
push,
great.
Old push carts, wonderful stuff. Yeah.
If we can get the camera to pan and just this is one of the things that they produced Therefore, golden reflections, an evening of fun and reminiscing then and now. And of course, there is a foreword and an introduction by Miss Jana Lee Clifford there that talks about Crew Road. And this was something that I didn't know. Says the resilience and character of the earliest settlers of Crew Road, formerly known as Through the Woods. Didn't know that that's what it was called, Through the Woods.
I didn't know that either.
Of course, Miss Janley is a real historian. But yes, and I had the opportunity to talk with Joellen Thompson, and she's really doing the whole family history of the Cayman Islands. And I hope that she likes to talk on radio, because I'm looking to have her on here at some point in time to talk about it. And I'm also told that Miss Ardith Smith, I think it is, from West Bay, has a treasure trove of information as well. And I want to, to start to revive Cayman's history. We need to do that. We need to keep it alive.
Well, one other fact which I don't think very many people from this day actually know is that after the 32 hurricane and the great damage that was done in the Prospect area, many of the families there moved down to Crew Road, and some of them moved whatever they had, the house, because the houses were all built of lumber, of wood in those days anyhow. So they dismantled them, those that were still in reasonable good shape, and they moved them down to Crew Road. And so the Thompsons and so forth, that's where they all came from. They came from a Prospect way.
Yeah,
because they thought Crew Road was much safer after the 32 hurricane, because sea met sea, I am told. The South Sound essentially met the North Sound, right across that area. So
similar to what you were talking about on the hurricane thing when in Hurricane Ivan, when you went outside and you tasted the salt water.
Yeah.
Yep. And she mentions also here, she talks about that the home of Richard Ryan was also shipped from Cayman Brac and rebuilt across the road opposite his brother-in-law, Captain Mac Thompson, who owned a wayside grocery store and the gas station. I remember that gas station.
Yeah, well, actually, the house that you're speaking about, Richard Ryan's, is the house that is Kieran's house, Mr. Wilfred Ryan.
Yes.
And the house across the road, the Mac Thompson, that's the house I grew up in.
You grew up
in? Yeah, we moved there in 1967. Yeah.
So it was really, really, really amazing. Like I said, I encourage other communities. You all have rich histories. There are still people living in your communities who were there in the early years. Get together if you have photographs and talk about it. We're going to go to a break at this point in time. Are we going to hear from our sponsors as well? Yeah, we will be hearing from our sponsors, and I want to remind you that For the Record is brought to you by Champion House Restaurant 2 and Champion House Cafe. Champion House Restaurant 2 is located on Eastern Avenue, and Champion House Cafe at 1 Butterfield Place, formerly Comart. Champion House, a family-oriented restaurant where locals, and I always say others, dine. And also, For the Record is brought to you by the Auto Spa on Godfrey Nixon Way. Stop by Radio Cayman or the Auto Spa and ask for your $5 savings coupon for your next full-service wash. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands. I'm told that we have one caller online, so we're going to take that caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning,
sir.
How are you?
OC and the Premier and the listening public, this is I1.
Yeah, how are you doing? I asked for you yesterday down by Hell gas station, but you weren't around.
I know.
The devil wasn't in hell. I don't know where he was.
I don't live so far from hell, you know. I'm glad that I had a good reunion there on Saturday night. That reminds me of a few years back. I put on something West Bay for the people that went to the town hall school between 39 and 52.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember presenting the Premier Father with a certificate, Mr. Warren Jackson, Miss Iris, all those teachers that were still living, they gave us certificate to, and those that were dead, Miss Alal and Mr. Spurgeon, Mr. Lee, we gave certificate to their families. We had a real reunion that night, singing and dancing and everything.
Yeah, I remember I was there. It was good. Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to do them things more often. That man was a big help to me, Mr. Rudy Garvin. So things like that take a little time, but what it. We had a real good reunion. What struck me some years ago, I went to the coal mines in West Virginia, and afterwards they gave us a tour of the schoolhouses and stuff. And there's the desks there, the blackboards and everything. And I came home then start wondering where all our desks gone to with our names and stuff on it. All that is dumped. We do not preserve much of anything. So it's little late now, but we got to start preserve what we got. And we blame other people coming here to carry our culture, but we need to do better what we're doing.
I agree with that, Mr. Ivan. And then there are a lot of people who have artifacts as well. You know, of course, their own family heirlooms, but at the same time, if they can share that with the public, it would be good to maybe, loan it to the National Gallery or things like that when there are the district days for Pirates Week and stuff. Let people see, some of our culture and our history as well. Share it with others.
So you all have a good day now. I don't want to take up your time because you don't give me no time in on the show, so I expect you.
I'm gonna soon give you. We're gonna soon give you your own show.
I got a joke, okay? You all have a blessed day now, okay?
Thank
All
you,
right, you too,
thank you
sir.
very much, Mr.
Okay.
Ivan.
Okay.
Premier, I mentioned also that today begins Right to Know Week, introduction of Freedom of Information legislation in the Cayman Islands was passed by our Legislative Assembly on the 3rd day of September 2007, something again that was initiated by your party and the administration of the then Honorable D. Kurt Tibbetts of Government Business.
Absolutely. It is one of the things that I think that we have every right to be very proud of as a party and as an administration when we were in government from 2005 to 2009. Freedom of information was one of the planks of our platform, and we did believe that it was so important and that it would transform, the whole way people viewed government and transform the way people in government behave. Because if you know that what you're doing is ultimately subject to public scrutiny, it makes you take a little more care in what you do and what you write, and it really has made a huge difference to Cayman, and it is really a very progressive thing. And I think more and more countries are waking up to the reality that in this era, it is so important that the public has access to government information, and the old rules about, well, you kept the information and guarded it as though it were some sort of national secret. That has changed, and that has had to change, and that the rule now is that you disclose the information unless there are very good reasons like national security or that it relates to personal matters and so forth for not releasing it.
And the encouragement to government agencies to be proactive in terms of what they publish.
Publishing information.
Publishing information. Yeah, that needs to be done. And as well as having as many proceedings, some of the proceedings of these boards open to public as well, so that the public can attend them.
Yeah, in that case, it's always a challenge to strike the right balance, because you want board members and so forth to be able to talk frankly about whatever the issues are and whatever the concerns are, and so, in some cases, it opening up to the public will have, I think, not such a good effect on the ability of boards to properly deliberate. But in other instances, like the Public Accounts Committee, I mean, that the work of that has been made public now for quite a number of years, and it seems to be working quite well.
Right.
I don't see any reason why the Development and Planning Authority shouldn't be able to operate in the same way. In immigration matters now, I can see, because you're dealing so much with people's personal things, that
Right.
it's much more difficult to. So that's what I'm saying, is that you have to strike the right balance, and it's not one size fits all. But by and large, I think there ought to be, we ought to lean in favor of making as many of these matters public as we possibly can.
Now, I notice also that Turks and Caicos, for instance, their cabinet proceedings, that they actually publish the decisions, list of the decisions that are made in cabinet, and that's done on a weekly basis as well. I know, when I was cabinet secretary, there was some talk about doing that as well, as opposed to having to have the press briefings every week, as well. Any consideration given to at least the agenda of the cabinet proceedings and the decisions, the routine decisions that are made?
Well, there is no difficulty in publishing decisions that are taken. I think where issues become much more sensitive really are, and well, given the experience that the deputy governor has gone through, he took the very proactive step of publishing the minutes as far as that was possible of chief officers' meetings, and he's been absolutely ridiculed by the media for doing so, because there are matters that get discussed which are very sensitive or involve personnel issues and that sort of stuff, and so in many cases the minutes were redacted to, and he's been absolutely pilloried as a result of it, and so it makes those of us in government think very carefully about, because once you start down that particular road, when you redact minutes, then that raises a whole set of questions and speculation, and in the end, I mean, the deputy governor's, what I thought was a very positive move on his part, has turned into something that is hugely negative, and the perception of those meetings and what goes on in the meetings is not good at all, and so we are looking very carefully at how we manage this, because as you know, in cabinet, it's not uncommon for matters to be deferred, because for consideration and so forth. And once you publish that it's on the agenda, then the questions continue to come. Well, what happened with it? What happened with it? And you spend so much time trying to explain. Actual decisions which have been taken, fine,
Okay.
no issue. But the agenda and the minutes are another matter altogether.
Right. Okay. We're going to come back to that. We're going to after the news. We're going to take a news break now, but we want to start off on that train of thought afterwards again. Please stay tuned. You're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands. We have one caller on the line, but before we go to that caller, I just want to remind you that we can be reached on our toll-free number, 1-800-534-8255 or 949-8037. You can also call us on 949-6990. That's not a toll-free number. And if you don't like to talk, then you can email us at fortherecord@candw.ky. Premier, before we go to the caller, we were talking about some of the proceedings of cabinet, whether or not, certainly may not want to publish the minutes, but if you were to consider publishing the
Decisions.
the decisions of
Yeah.
cabinet,
Yeah.
that were made, and if the public, as including the media, if they know from the onset that this is what you're going to get, and it's going to be limited to this. Yes, they can criticize you, or they can critique, what you do in relation to that, but that creates no additional expectations from them to get any more than what you actually are going to put out there.
Right. Right. Decisions. There's no difficulty with decisions. It's as I say, the issue with the agenda is that if something's on the agenda and a decision doesn't come out the other end, then there are all sorts of questions about
What happened? Yeah.
about why. But there are all sorts of internal reasons why decisions don't get taken or don't get taken at a particular meeting, and I certainly wouldn't want that to be within the public, because within the public arena, because it's going to seriously affect the ability of cabinet to work and to be frank about things and to take proper decisions, because everybody's going to be worried about what the media is going to say because this hasn't happened or that hasn't happened. And the media is an insatiable beast. No matter how much information you feed it, it just wants more and more and more. And increasingly, what they want is salacious stuff. They don't care at all about how it impacts individuals or even how it impacts the country. It's the overriding consideration is to make the headline. And so we have to consider all of these things very carefully. It is the business of the country we're running there. There are a whole range of issues, from national security considerations to matters, sensitive matters in respect of commercial issues and how it affects Cayman and Cayman's continued viability as a jurisdiction. So one has to be very careful about how you manage these things, bearing in mind, of course, the country's right and need to know as much information as it possibly can about the workings of government.
Certainly, and the whole intent of freedom of information legislation is to give the public access to, to let the sun shine in on government, let them see, what's happening, and we've seen so much information come out as a result of that, and of course, the media has been one of the primary beneficiaries of freedom of information legislation. Let's just jump to that caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Premier, and good morning, Mr. O.C.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Morning, Mr. Billy.
Great. I'm great. I see the green of the grass this morning when I go for my walk and not the route, so I'm thankful. Freedom of information, sir. I've done it before, do it again, I'll continue to do it, to thank you for introducing freedom of information to the Cayman Islands, the legislation, to put it into play.
You're most welcome, sir. It's a very important part of good governance, and I've always been a strong proponent of it.
Sunshine is a wonderful purifier.
Yep. It helps you grow too.
Yes, sir. It's vital to life. And we have grown a lot because our people have become more informed with what freedom of information, the information that they can get to understand governance. Because unfortunately, in our educational system, in our way of life, the British way of doing things is to keep people ignorant and barefoot. And they do not want you to really understand what's going on. We see them falling all over themselves up in Scotland now after what nearly occurred up there. Regrettably, it didn't occur, but anyway.
Yeah, had them scared.
I would have, if I had a vote there, I would have voted to go independent with them. But anyway, what has happened with freedom of information is that our people are understanding governance more and more. And the more information that people have is the less opportunity you have for those that know to be able to confuse people, especially when it comes to time of voting. Because people are getting more and more able to make individual informed choices when they go to the voting booth, and with one man, one vote and all these things coming up. And so it was wonderful what was done. There's a long road ahead because the attitude of many departments of government, because I have used FOI quite a bit. I have used the appeal process quite a bit. And regrettably, especially in some ministries, the culture of secrecy is so ingrained that it's obvious that these things need to be released. It's obvious that where the law is, but yet still, they do not adopt the principles of freedom of information. They're not adopting the publication scheme, because if they did, a lot of freedom of information requests would not be necessary.
Could be, yeah, that could be avoided. Yes, yes. But Mr. Billy, you did experience the same frustration, not only here in the Cayman Islands, but also with the UK itself, I believe.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, as you know, right after the UK came out with freedom of information, I wrote them for the minutes of the meeting of 2002, December 7th and 9, when we were meeting up there to discuss the Cayman Islands Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, they didn't have freedom of information. And they, at that time, at that meeting, Mr. Alden, you'll remember, told us that they were not taking minutes. But sitting close to me was Colin Bird and Peter Glass. Both of them, they had two note takers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I used that 2 months after the British Freedom of Information Act came in, I think in 2005, and I was able to obtain the minutes of those meetings. So, you know, that's what I'm saying about the UK. You know, I mean, they don't want you to know too much about these things. And it's changing. It's coming slowly. But I'm more concerned about our Cayman Islands and the access to information. The culture, Mr. Premier, if you can get that culture out and get that message through, the cost of freedom of information will drop drastically if they adopt the attitude of making access freely available.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to congratulate you again, sir. Mr. Osea, enjoy your show. I listen to it, and I go between the two because I like the other one too. But you're doing a good job, sir, for all that I listen to, and best wishes for your ride around Jamaica as you all go over there on your Grill ride. Sounds very interesting.
Thank you very much, Billy. And we're going to be talking about data protection, so continue to listen, and if you want to give some input on that as well, I'm sure that you have ideas and you've done some research on it, please feel free to call back as well. Premier, told we have another caller in line. Let's grab that caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record. Caller?
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, sir. I was amazed this morning to listening to you all talking about the Caymanian way of life and the things of Cayman that's so precious to us, and the things that mean so much. I was saying to myself, and I say, you know, they're talking about things that we love, and things that really mean so much. And then the thing that really hurt me this morning is think that we're thinking about all these things, and then here we are coming towards the end of this month, and our heritage is still, yes, in question. And I hope that we'll weigh more. We'll weigh it more, thinking about our heritage in relation to the question we're going to be weighing this Sunday and the Monday, the end of this month. We'll think about it more and realize more what it means. It's all a part of the heritage of our country and our people. As Caymanians, to think that we can't give up the most important thing when it comes to our way of life. The things that we have held all of our life, and these are the things that's a part of our life, and the things that makes us who we are. And it's all a part of our freedom. And I trust that you realize that these are the things that makes us who we are. And each day, and every once in a while, it seems like there is something that we lose. And that these are the things that makes us Caymanians. We are free people, and you know, we need just to think that we can't, as a people, we can't afford to lose. You know, we've always thought about it. Well, we are in Cayman. Caymanians are the friendliest people. People enjoy more freedom. We are the easiest people to get along with. And in our country, you know, we need to realize that there's nowhere and anywhere you could find people that are freedom. They have their freest people. They're as a whole, we need to realize who we are and what makes us who we are, and realize that Sunday is one of the greatest parts of us because of our Christian heritage, and forget about the idea about Sunday and Monday. Sunday is one of the great parts of us because of our heritage, because of our relationship with God.
Yep, and caller,
Those
that's
are
what.
Those are the things that makes us who we are and where we are.
Thank you, caller, and that's what we want to do. We're encouraging people in their neighborhoods to talk about their heritage, to display what they have in relation to their upbringing, their some of the activities that took place in their districts and stuff like that. So we ask you to leave us their caller, but continue to encourage people to talk and to display what they have about their heritage. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands. I also want to remind you that For the Record is brought to you by Champion House Restaurant 2 and Champion House Cafe. Champion House Restaurant 2 is located on Eastern Avenue, and Champion House Cafe at 1 Butterfield Place, formerly Comart. Champion House, a family-oriented restaurant where locals, and I always say others, dine as well. And also, For the Record is brought to you by the Auto Spa on Godfrey Nixon Way. You can stop by Radio Cayman or the Auto Spa and ask for your $5 savings coupon for your next full-service wash. When we come back, we're going to talk about the National Security Council and the misconceptions that I hear some people who call into radio talk show about the National Security Council. We want to address some of those misconceptions that people appear to have. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands. I promised you that we won't talk about the National Security Council, and for the benefit of our listening audience, I want to tell you that the National Security Council is specifically addressed in Section 58 of the Cayman Islands Constitution Order 2009, and it makes provisions for a National Security Council with the Governor as chair, the Premier, 2 other ministers appointed in writing by the Governor acting in accordance with the advice of the Premier, the Leader of the Opposition or his or her designate, 2 persons representative of civil society appointed in writing by the Governor acting after consultation with the Premier and Leader of the Opposition, and the Deputy Governor as ex officio member of the National Security Council. Then you have the Attorney General, who is also an ex officio member, the Commissioner of Police, who is also the ex officio member, and the Cabinet Secretary serves as the Secretary to the National Security Council as well. And the National Security Council, its remit has also been outlined and in the Constitution, stated, not just outlined, but stated in the Constitution, and it says that the Commission, the National Security Council, I'm stuck here for a second. Okay. Shall advise the governor on matters relating to internal security, with the exception of operational and staffing members, and the governor shall be obliged to act in accordance with the advice of the council unless he or she considers that giving effect to that advice would adversely affect Her Majesty's interests, whether in respect of the United Kingdom or the Cayman Islands, and where the governor has acted otherwise than in accordance with the advice of the council, he or she shall report to the council at its next meeting. Now, I have heard a caller in particular, talk about the National Security Council renewing the contract of the Commissioner of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, and it is quite clear here in the Constitution that the National Security Council has no authority whatsoever, and I'm going to welcome the Premier now to make comments on this if he so wishes.
Well, thank you, Osia, but I think you've dealt with it adequately. The National Security Council is a body that is constitutionally required to give advice to the governor on matters affecting national security. And in most instances, the governor is required to accept that advice. But as the section says, that advice does not extend to operational or staffing matters. As it is with all other aspects of the public service, the elected government does not have any authority over the appointment of, promotion, transfer, or discipline of the public service. And so this is just an extension of that same principle as it relates to operational and staffing matters for the police service. So matters about who gets hired as Commissioner of Police, who gets promoted within the Royal Police, Cayman Islands Police Service, are matters for Her Excellency and not for the elected government or for the National Security Council.
Again, thank you very much, Premier, for that. Of course, the Ernst & Young report on the rationalization of the government services has been the subject of some debate here on this talk show, as well as on other talk shows. And people need to understand, on the Deputy Governor's website, the report is there, and also there is an explanation of the commission by Ernst & Young. They were given to undertake a strategic review of public service and current market conditions for the feasibility of implementing previous recommendations provided in internal and external reports. And so we can look and see what the remit of Ernst & Young was given by the Deputy Governor. But again, some misconceptions again in relation to how this all played out. And again, Mr. Premier, if you could explain to the public how the report came about, where responsibility, lies for it, and of course, it would have been a policy decision that was made by the government as well.
Yes. Well, I think we all are aware of the pressures the Cayman Island government has been under over the course of the last few years, um, and also aware of how the overall cost of government has increased over the course of the last 10 years. A great part of that increase has related to personnel costs and the proportion of the government budget that has to go to sustain the operation of central government and the civil service in particular uh, has been a matter of great concern. With the downturn in revenue which we experienced in 2008 when the global recession first took hold, these things were thrown into stark relief. And of course, there were a number of reports. There was the Miller-Shaw report. There were a number of other reports about how do we actually start to contain the cost of government. Because as government revenue has grown over the years, correspondingly, the operational costs of government have grown. And in recent years, the operational costs had grown faster than revenue. And so we got into the difficulties that we were in, and to some extent are still in. And so when we took office, obviously these things were still the case, and we believe strongly, as I think that does most people who think about these things, that we have to find a way to make the business of government more efficient, more effective, more cost effective, and we have to find a way to contain the growth in the operational costs. Now, we don't subscribe to the more extreme views that I see published, quite regularly in the Compass, for instance, who seem to think that what we should do is just get rid of almost everyone who works for government, that we should pay them next to nothing, and that we should let the private sector do everything. At the same time, screaming for more services. That's very common. But we do subscribe to and endorse the approach that was taken by the Deputy Governor. He spoke to me at some length about it, spoke to Cabinet about it, about the need for a report conducted by an independent body or entity, which would look objectively at the whole public service and make recommendations about how we could improve the operations. It's called rationalization. How we could make various government services more effective, how we could reduce costs, make recommendations about what government could do with respect to some of its assets, some that should be sold off, some that should be converted into a different kind of entity, and so forth, the amalgamation of various government agencies and departments and services, and produce a holistic report. That's what's been done. The job now is for Cabinet to sit and look at those recommendations and make decisions about the way forward. I can tell you, having looked at it, there are recommendations there that there is no way the Cabinet is going to agree to them, because the Cabinet has to take into consideration matters which people in the private sector don't have to worry about. When a private sector entity, a company, decides that it needs to downsize for one reason or another, they downsize. They decide who has to go. They write the checks. They send them off, and they don't worry about it again. But when they send them off, government has to worry about them, because government is responsible for the welfare of the people and for the country. And if you have people unemployed who need help, to whom do they turn? So that's with respect to the private sector. So can you imagine government dealing with its own employees, it's the public servants as well? So government has to take into account other considerations which the private sector doesn't necessarily have to take into account, and government cannot proceed as ruthlessly as persons in the private sector can do, and many seem to advocate government should do. This government is not going to go about it in in that way, we are deeply conscious and sensitive of our responsibility to the country as a whole and to our employees as well. But there is a clear need for government to become more efficient, for us to be able to contain the growth in operational costs, and by becoming more efficient, by amalgamating various agencies and departments, and about going about the provision of services in a different way. There are some government agencies and some services which we do believe can be hived off to the private sector if done in a proper way, to be able to preserve jobs for the people who go with them. And we are looking to overall reduce the government footprint and the operational cost of government, and indeed the number of services the government provides. But we're going to go about it in a careful, thoughtful, sensitive way. We do not intend to create any shocks to the economy and shocks to people's personal lives. We're very conscious that those in the public service are like anybody else, with families to raise and mortgages to pay and loans to and commitments that they have to deal with.
And not a very receptive private sector that is out there willing to
Right, particularly in this time, when the economy is moving, but still nowhere near the pace that it was 8-10 years ago, where you had a private sector that could absorb large numbers of persons from anywhere else. So it is not going to be a simple or easy task, but it's one that the government is undertaking. We are actually starting a careful consideration of the report today in caucus. And I expect that in very short order we'll be able to make some announcements, because, as I've said before in another forum, we are not going to wait until we work through the entire report and got to the end before we start taking decisions. What we're going to do first is to look at what Ernst & Young, EY, has identified as what they call the quick wins, see whether we agree with that analysis, and start making decisions about some of the things we're going to do, and indeed some of the things that we're not going to do. So we take those off the table, relatively early, and we settle fears and concerns which have already been expressed to us about, some of the major recommendations.
Okay, two questions. Well, first I want to observe that that we were in the report that in part of the remit of Ernst & Young was to preserve or enhance service levels and standards, communicate with stakeholders throughout the process to ensure fair and equitable treatment of existing employees, to attract local participation, to provide public services and or ownership of government assets where a fair market exists, to promote fair competition in the marketplace, to maximize employment for Caymanians, to consider the economic, financial, and social implications. And what I say to people is that to study that report and see how much consideration has been given to the social implications, of the recommendations that have been made. Another observation is that some persons have expressed on this show that they don't have the ability to access a computer or to print, to get a hard copy of it. And I know that the report is some 200 and odd pages long. Whether or not the government would consider, and maybe you can answer this or maybe not, because it's a decision, I would imagine, for the public service itself, consider making hard copies available for those persons who are unable to access the document otherwise.
I'm sure we would, but I find it difficult to believe that in this day and age most people can't have access to.
Some of my elder callers have mentioned
to a computer. I mean, there's you just go down to the public library and you can get on. maybe people don't want don't want to do that. I know some people still prefer to feel the paper. But I will speak to the deputy governor and see whether we can make some copies available. Uh, if there is that level of interest in it, we certainly can want
Yeah.
people to get the information.
Maybe if some sort of a contact number for someone the person can call, and even if it means just vetting them briefly to see whether or not you can determine whether or not they have the ability to do it otherwise. But certainly that would be good.
No, well, I mean the cost in printing it are not, are not great. So
Right.
I mean there's a lot of pages, but we we I don't think we'll have any difficulty in producing. If there was that level of interest, a couple of hundred of these, if that's what's required. I haven't really heard much demand for
Just a few,
for hard
just a
copies.
few calls,
so,
just a few callers. That's it. So callers, you heard that. If you have no way of getting the document, accessing it, then that's the Premier is going to speak with the Deputy Governor about making it available. And rather than wasting paper and having them sitting there, maybe it will be on an as-needed basis in terms of people. We have 3 callers on the line, so we're going to take those callers now. First caller, good morning, and welcome to For the Record.
Morning, gentlemen. Number one from the Bronx.
Morning, number one. How are you?
Oh, I'm in a bad mood for the last 2 weeks
Tell me why.
because I'm hearing about this young or old or whatever it is with the recommendation. First of all, I want to say, Arlen, don't you ever get rid of Radio Cayman.
No, I think that one is pretty safe. Don't worry.
I hope so. Otherwise, you're going to hear more. And listen, when it comes to about, they are telling you about selling out government, this and that and other thing. What's going to happen next year? The same thing again?
Well, as I said, we think the report is very valuable. We think they've done a lot of very good work. But it is a report. It is recommendations. It is ultimately a decision for the government to decide what it is we do with those recommendations. So I don't want people to be beating up on E&Y. They've done a professional job. It is their recommendations. It's their report. It is for us to decide what we do about it.
Yeah, that's right. It's all of your decision. And what I want to say to you is this. When the other 2 things, when it comes to this thing about going to daylight saving time and changing Sunday trade laws and things, just leave Cayman Islands as it is. Don't go making the place look like New York City, because people are coming to the Cayman Islands for a new, different look. They don't want to get up and say, oh, we went back New York. No, leave it as it is, because that's what Cayman Islands is following the outside world, and that's what's going to carry it right down to the last. Don't do it.
Well, what I want to say about both of those things is the government has not taken any decision with respect to them. Both of them are consultation exercises, because believe it or not, there are people who as strongly as you feel about not changing it, there are many people who feel strongly that we do need change. So the government's job is to try to determine what is the view of the majority of people, and that is why we're going through this consultation exercise with both the issue of extending Sunday trading, because I think what most people miss is that there's already a significant amount of Sunday trading that is allowed for in the law, but there's also a considerable amount of Sunday trading that is going on in breach of the law, and the government has to decide what we do about those things. As far as daylight saving time is concerned, this is something that has been discussed for many, many years, and there's strong views one way and strong views another, and so the government is trying to ascertain where the majority view lies and to take its decision based on that.
Well, I hope you'll have someone go around every district and ask everyone and tell them to come here too, because I'll give them my answer too, and make them get a full report then.
Okay, sir. Good to hear from you.
All right, so just keep the Cayman Islands as it is. Leave it alone.
Okay, thank
Or
you.
Don't give it away.
No, we're not gonna do that. Don't worry.
Thank you very much, number one. Thank you very much. Next caller, please. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you doing,
Good
sir?
morning. Good morning, sir. Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Morning,
Good
Mr.
morning.
Macfield. How are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm good. Yes, I'm
Good,
all
good.
right.
Good to hear from you.
Yes, sir. I had the opportunity. I took the opportunity to hop over to the BRAC this last weekend, I wanted to observe some things for myself, on which I hope to discuss some of them with Orit next Friday if he asks me back on the show. That's particular about the seamen. I visited the seamen's, the sacred seamen's monument, and the records of the sea captains and the seafarers. But one thing that struck me, Mr. Premier, is the state of the BRAC. I have never seen so many shuttered, boarded up, empty, deserted homes in the country, and land for sale on the waterfront and inland. Every other 100 yards you get, there's a for sale sign for the properties for sale. And one thing struck me. I passed through a place they called Panama Canal. It had no relevance to Panama Canal. The only relevance that it had to Panama is the poverty that I saw around, and the men sitting around there already early in the morning, drinking and cooking out in the open. And I spoke to several people as I went up and down the island. And one thing that struck me, sir, was the fact that I didn't see too many brackers working. Nearly every institution I went in, there were immigrants working there, work permit holders working there, mostly from Philippines. In fact, I thought I was like in the Philippines when in some institutions when I went in there, and I wondered what is happening to the BRAC. What is happening to the BRAC? It seems to me that, and the scientists tell us that the core of a reactor to generate electricity, the life is in the core of the reactor to generate electricity, and also the core of life is somewhere in man's body that makes him want to survive and to live. I didn't find that in the BRAC. The BRAC seems to me like a room where there is a soul candle flickering to stay light. It seems to me that light for the BRAC is flickering to stay on. And I spoke to one prominent citizen there, and I was speaking to him, and I was saying to him, it seems like the train is leaving the BRAC, and he says, no, sir, the train has already left the BRAC. What is the reason for the obvious desertion of the BRAC? What is the reason? And he told me, I asked him, what was going on, and why was so many places closed? And he says, whole families have left, and children have left, and whole families have left, and young people have left the BRAC to find better jobs, more exciting jobs, more adventure further on in the world. And that leads me to the rhetorical question: where have all the braggers gone? Where have all the braggers gone? And you know, it reminds me of I have had experience to see a person dying and a person's birth. I haven't seen. I don't know how the BRAC was. I didn't have the experience to see how the BRAC was born, but I'm experiencing how the BRAC is dying. And like most social scientists say, societies are born and societies die. And you can read about that, like the Aztec Indians, the great Roman society, the great Greek society, and so forth. Something has to happen to the BRAC. You can't just let it go. So has the report have anything to the sale of assets? Are they going to be part of the BRAC's the provision for public services to the BRAC also? Mm-hmm. Are they also going to be privatized? Something has to happen to the BRAC, sir. And you know, it takes some imagination. As I went up and down the country, I saw a lot of loan personal businesses, and I wondered, why don't they just get together and perhaps have a Bracamana and pool their resources to bring the BRAC back?
Okay, Mr. McPhee, we're going to have the Premier answer that as soon as we get back. We're going to take a quick break for the news headlines, and we're going to be right back. We have a few callers online as well, but we'll have the Premier answer Mr. McField's question as well as the others. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands. We have one more caller on the line, so Premier, before we answer Mr. McField's questions, very important questions, we're going to take this caller. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, good morning, gents.
Good morning,
good morning, sir.
Okay, all right. Honorable Premier.
Yes, sir.
Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you.
I can't get to call you Alden no more, man, because I don't see you riding up around Jacks.
Yeah, Jimmy. Yeah, Jimmy. He was out yesterday, though. He was out yesterday.
I did 65 really hard miles yesterday. I have to tell you, it was so hot.
Okay.
But I didn't get north side.
All right. But I still like to throw the Alden on you, you know.
That's fine. But that's what.
I know where to put it. I know where to put it and when to put it.
That's what Althea named me, and that's a good name.
Yeah, you only got one of them, so hang on to that. Okay, back to this. Another gentleman you got there, Mr. Jose.
Hey, Jimmy.
Speaking of those dips and things there. And up in the early 90s, I bought one of those disposable cameras, and I was coming up on at Mr. Man stomping ground there up on Crew Road. So I remember the dip. I had bought the camera especially to take pictures of the dip. Then bush. So I got as best as I could from it, but I didn't go too far into it because I remember them areas used to have plenty of ticks. Trust me. So I had got it developed and put it down in one container I got here. I had a hard time getting the pictures to get it how I wanted it because I knew what it was. That's why I got a camera to go take it because I know it was going to go to destruction one of these days. So I wanted to hold up on it, but you brought it out now, so I got to look for these pictures so I can bring them to you and show you what it looked like.
Okay, yeah, if you find it, because you say it isn't there. Did they fill it in? Is it?
No. I checks it often, man. It's still there.
Okay.
But I mean, it really got filled in. The one that was by the corner store there in what we call Knight and Fox. That's where our dip was down in that area there, right on the west corner. That's where the West Bay dip was. So that's filled in and gone. So you know these things just keep moving.
Yep.
I look forward in time to come and get it to you.
Okay,
so
thanks.
You can decide what you want to do with it.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. You have a great day. We have another caller online. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Mr. Connor.
Morning, Miss Daphne. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being such a very fine talk show host. And Mr. McLaughlin, good morning to you.
Good morning, Miss Daphne. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. And thank you for being such a good premier.
Thank you.
I guess you needed that this morning, especially when it comes from the heart, you know? Anyway, darling, on to what I was going to say is it was heartening to see the amount of very, very good passes which were listed in a recent newspaper from the Cayman Prep and High School. And one of the things that I learned only yesterday, which made me feel so good, was that quite a number of those who had such excellent passes were those who had actually come from the John Gray High School and then moved to the prep to do their A-levels. So what I'd like to say today is congratulations to all of them, but in particular to mention that that those from the John Gray High School who are amongst that number should feel really good, and I think that the public needs to know this, because the support of the John Gray High School needs to be, the John Gray High School needs to receive as much commendation and encouragement as it can. I also trust, sir, that the Education Department is going to put a lot of emphasis on improvement in those numbers, both from the actual John Gray graduation as well as for those who move on to further their education, and what those reports are. Because sometimes it's just, people have a perception that, like they said about Jesus, anything good can come out of wherever that was. But the thing is that I believe that we need to promote and let the public know exactly what's happening. I trust that somehow or the other, the numbers may increase, and that the Education Department have been able to do some volunteer work around that school from time to time. And I must say that it seems like the teachers are dedicated and all, but as we all know, there are some amongst them who want to learn really bad, and sometimes the disruption from those around them who don't seem to care whether they get a hit or not. So I hope that this is looked at very seriously, and that the John Gray High School will in every way be possible given the credit it's due for what has happened, whether that be at some of the, say, for instance, at the, at the prep and high school and the good grades there, the good reports and passes there, or whether that's at UCCI or in any other institution of higher learning, even abroad. So I wanted to pass that on to you. I hope that, I'm sure we can depend on you for help to keep Radio Cayman on the air. I am going to get off the air right now, but I hope that people understand that whatever the subsidy is that government is providing for the radio station at this point in time is worth it, because they provide such a great service. I am personally aware that many people listen to Radio Cayman because of its variety and its content, and they realize the dedication of staff and all. And so when you look at the millions the government has to find and allocate to other government entities, we need to take seriously into consideration the value of Radio Cayman for what it is, other than just saying, well, government has to subsidize by a few $100,000 a year or whatever. I say to the Cayman public, send your advertising to Radio Cayman so that it'll be less of a burden to government, but continue to keep that entity on the air.
Thank you,
God
caller.
bless you, gentlemen. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. We have another caller on the line. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good
I'm calling from Cayman Brac, and I'm a Caymanian American, and I live overseas part of the time, and I live at Northeast Bay the other time.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. I can barely hear you though.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's better.
that's better.
We'll have to agree to disagree with the gentleman that was sort of trashing Cayman Brac, because I like to think of Cayman Brac as New Hampshire instead of Maine. Maine has a lot of traffic. New Hampshire does not. The good parts about Cayman Brac is we don't have a lot of traffic, and that's a good thing. Cayman Brac is not for everybody, and I would have to say that it's very painted up. It's a very quiet place. Let's look at the positive things, and I'll have to disagree with a lot of statements that the gentleman made. In his comment about the Panama Canal, that's a place where boats come in, and the government made a nice shelter there for the fishermen to clean their fish. My brother has cleaned his fish there many times. We're a quiet mind our own business place. We're not big and pushy, okay? So to say that Cayman Brac is dying, I totally disagree with that. I think a lot's going on quietly. And for instance, we had 25 walkers for the breast cancer walk on Saturday. That's a very big deal. It brings awareness to the community, and we have behind the scenes things going on, okay?
Yep, understood. That's good. That's great.
Thank you.
On behind the scenes, things are going on, and I think maybe the gentleman didn't speak to the right people. First of all, if you go into the stores, things are clean, the shelves are stacked, we get things on time. It's a quiet, clean place to live. It's a very decent place. I would be proud to bring any of my American friends to Cayman Brac. The roads are clean. They're not crowded. It's a quiet, lovely place.
Yeah, I think, caller, that I don't think that he was trashing the Brac per se. I think he's been to the Brac before. He's seen it. He was more concerned about the economy of the Brac as opposed to anything else. But I'll let the Premier make his comments in terms of his take on that as well, and his answer to Mr. McField's question. So if you, I'd invite you to continue to listen so you can hear the remarks, and maybe Mr. McField may call back and explain his concerns, in more detail as well.
Not a poverty-ridden place, okay?
No, yeah, I don't think he was saying that, caller.
Yes, he did. And he trashed the Panama Canal area by saying people were sitting around. And in Cayman Net News, I have noticed, and I'm a daily reader of Cayman Net News, a lot of people from Grand Cayman will trash Cayman Brac by calling us names and saying that we are a welfare place. We are not. It is a quiet place. People work for a living here, and we mind our own business, okay?
We're all. It's all a part of the Cayman Islands. We're all in that boat. Caller, to ask if you could leave us there. Premier, you want to respond? We have another caller, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond before we lose focus on this.
Yeah, well, I think what we've just experienced with the call from Mr. McField, and then the call, this recent call from the Bracker, is the huge difference in perspectives that exist. Many people on the Brac, I've been to the Brac many times. I've been there. This year I've been there probably half a dozen times already. But I've been going to the Brac since, I think my first trip to the Brac was 1981, when I was about 20 years old. I've been to the Brac many times. I've seen the growth, the development, the change over the years. Many people on the Brac, and I mean many people on the Brac who live there, want the Brac to remain the same. Mm-hmm. The quiet, placid, peaceful place that the last caller spoke about. And then there are those in business and those in government who worry about the lack of economic activity. And there is always the resistance and always the challenge of how do you create that economic activity without changing the whole character of the place. And there's always the pushback with respect to this. If you look at the Brac objectively, I doubt that there's any place else in the world, quite frankly, with a population of about 2,000 people that has the quality infrastructure that the Brac does. Mm-hmm. An excellent airport being made even better, a better road system, better quality roads than Grand Cayman has. Electricity, water. All of the critical infrastructure that you could think of or want to sustain, a vibrant community and economic activity. But this is my take. But the problem for the Brac that I've always noted. And this is not just now. This has been the case for many, many years. From the 70s, really, when persons started to migrate from the BRAC to Cayman for work during the first real construction boom. The BRAC's population has hovered around 2,000. And that is not critical mass. Unless you reach critical mass where there are enough people to create the demand for the services and goods and so forth to make the economy viable, you won't get that kind of economic activity. They don't get enough tourists to be able to create that demand that is necessary. We have been working, and the Deputy Premier Moses Kerner has really been working hard to try to find a way to increase the traffic into the BRAC, the air traffic, the tourist traffic into the BRAC. One of the big thrusts behind changing the aircraft, and we're looking to get a different aircraft to go into the BRAC, is to make it easier and make it more attractive for people to go to tourists to go to the BRAC on a bigger, more comfortable
There was some
plane.
indication that was going to take place earlier, a few months ago, August.
Yes, it was. We actually should have taken delivery of the aircraft, but there's some issues with it. No change in our commitment. It's just administrative issues. It'll soon be here. But also, the work going on now to make sure that we can have what's called whole baggage inspections done in the BRAC, so that we can get direct flights from the U.S. into the BRAC and out, to try to increase the traffic from that end. But the reality is, as I said, and this is something that doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but the reality is, without critical mass in terms of population and tourist visitors, you'll never get the BRAC economy moving to the extent that it needs to be able to employ people from the BRAC. I encourage some who are here who would like to go back, to encourage people from Grand Cayman to go there to live and work. Right now, a significant number of Caymanians go there just to retire, but that doesn't create a great deal of economic activity. And unless we get the critical mass in terms of population, it is always going to struggle. One of the things that I've noted, and Mr. McFeel alluded to it, is that while the population has, although he didn't put it in these precise words, although the population has still continued to hover around 2,000, 1,800, 2,000, I'm not sure precisely where it is, what I've noted is a significant increase in non-Caymanians who are there, and which again is another phenomenon. You have many BRACers who are out of work, but you have a significant number of non-BRACers who are there on work permits, performing mainly these service level jobs in the restaurants, in the bars, and the hotels and so forth. And I suppose that's not a great deal different of what obtains in Grand Cayman as well, but it's much more obvious in the BRAC because the overall population is so small. So I think this makes out Mr. McField's point, is that the actual BRACer population is continuing to decline, and unless something happens to change this dynamic, it's going to wind up, this is my view, a place really for retirees, for those who can afford it in the longer term, because there's going to be very little. If government wasn't there, quite frankly, and I think the number is something like 75-80% of the BRAC population is actually employed by government in one way or another, it really would not be viable from an economic standpoint.
Okay, thank you for that, Premier. We have one caller in line. Caller, I'm going to ask you if you can hold on. We're going to take a quick break, but we will take your call before we go off air. So we ask you to stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands. We have one caller, and I promised that caller that we were going to take their call. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record, and thanks for being so patient.
Good morning.
Good morning, Blondie. How are you?
I'm very grateful, Mr. Connor, and how are you?
I'm grand. I'm fine, thanks.
Yes. I'd like to welcome Mr. Alden McLaughlin, the Premier, and I would also like to wish him a belated happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Virgo, you keep a very close birthday with mine. I can't remember if it's the 4th or the 6th, but I know it's close there.
Mine is the 6th.
Okay, and that is one thing that we Virgos got in common. One of the many things, and that is being very patient. We're very patient. However, I'd just like to touch briefly on two topics. The first being the National Security
Council?
Committee.
Council, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like, though, to say that, first of all, I know you didn't probably still get as much appreciation and thanks and all the work that you have done, Mr. Connor, through the many years as the first Chief Immigration Officer, Caymanian Chief Immigration Officer for the Cayman Islands. And I know you have laid a good ship there during your tenure, and you have made a very big contribution to these islands. And I must say this, that you had the ship going forward, and I must say this, in my humble opinion, I really think that since you have left there, with all due respect, that the ship is now going backward. And that is a very serious thing, because I know you have done so much as far as preparing these islands for the 21st century and looking at all the sensitive information that surrounds our national security. And that comes in all aspects. I mean, you just don't look at one thing. But as the past Chief Immigration Officer, I know that you have taught us so many things, and today some of the things that we may have thought that you were a bit hard on, now we come to realize how intelligent and how smart and the heart that you had for Cayman.
Thanks, Blondie. Thanks for that.
Those decisions. And it's now that we are able to probably see a little further and appreciate those. But sometimes, it's too late when we do see these things. However, I really would like to see you as part of that decision making or committee or whatever, because I think without someone like you there being able to help advise and guide those persons that are not accustomed and may not have the information and experience as you have in this field, I think we would be very bad off if we don't have someone like you as our own Caymanian with your heart and interest on this very important and serious subject.
Thanks, Blondie, but I'm enjoying my tenure now as a talk show host. But there are many capable people on there in the National Security Council, and my successor, the Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Samuel Rose, is quite capable as well. And I'm always there if he has any questions. He can always give me a call, and sometimes he does that. We do converse on a regular basis.
Actually, say this out on the air as well. And the second thing was the graduation. It's good to hear those that are doing so well during our graduation and passes and everything else. But one has to look at the social fabric of this country and the social issues with those surrounding, especially, that are failing our system, that the percentage of those that are not passing. We can't take those that are passing and doing so well and overlook those that are left behind. And I will close by saying, if you would please allow me, because I know your last words is to see if there is any kind gesture or whatever we can do for our brothers and sisters that may not be as fortunate as us. And I I would like if you would please give me the permission, Mr. Connor, to read a little a poem, two short poems that were written by two school children, and they were a collection of poems, and I came across it last week. And if you would be so kind, just allow me to
Sure,
read
if they're not too long, go right ahead.
Okay, and I think it would coincide with the words that you leave with us, and especially with school children that are sometimes left behind. It says, "No one knows how I feel, not even me. I wish this feeling would go away and just let me be. I sit in my room, I sit and I cry, thinking and wondering, what if I were to die? Would anyone care? What would they say? Would they come to my funeral or just turn away? No one would care because no one would know, just like they don't know now because they don't let it show." And the other one said, "I am suffocating and I just need to breathe. I'm smothered under pressure. I must be relieved. Nothing I do is right. Nothing they say is fair. I cry and scream and throw a fit, but no one seems to care. Nobody would listen to what I have to say. My life is not important, yet I'm living every day. I can't do what I want. I can't stay out late. Here I sit and write this poem to release my pain and hate. I'm confused and I'm alone. I'm lost inside in mind. No one will reach beyond my looks to see what they might find. So many thoughts confuse me, feelings I can't perceive. In this time of adolescence, and I just need to leave. None of it makes sense. None of this seems real. And no one understands the emotions that I feel. I'm still suffocating, and I still need to breathe. I'm smothered under feelings. Lord, let me be relieved." So I'll just leave those thoughts with us, all of us, to think about those children and adolescents, young people and older ones that might be undergoing some of these feelings right now, because Cayman is a very hard place now to live, especially those that are enduring those kind of feelings and thoughts and unemployment. Thank you very much, and you all have a blessed day.
Thank you, Blonde, and you do the same also.
Thank you.
Premier, we've reached beyond the 9:30 hour at this point in time.
Time just raced away today.
I know, it just flies when you're talking about important things and interesting things that people like to hear. Legislative Assembly, meetings are over now. Private members' motions, some passed. What's in the future now? What the future holds for us in terms of the things that the administration will be taking on, some of the pressing issues?
Well, we had a very eventful, and I think in the 14 years have been probably the most productive meeting of the Legislative Assembly in terms of how much work we actually got through and how many things we got achieved. You know, in 5 days, we went through 3 government bills, 5 statements from ministers, 14 parliamentary questions, and 10 private members' motions. I think that's something of a record. But obviously the big, the headliner was the one elector, one vote, single member electoral districts motion of the government, which passed, and a number of significant private members' motions. I don't think we have time to go through all of them now. We intend to have another meeting of the Legislative Assembly, I think very early next month, because we have 2 important government bills that we really do need to get through. I don't know, because obviously I don't know how many private members' motions may come in that time, but I don't think it will be a long meeting. But the next really substantial meeting will be towards the end of November, because we have the strategic policy statement to deliver by the 1st of December, to start the budget process for the next year again. So I expect that's going to be an eventful meeting. There are a significant number of things that are going on outside the Legislative Assembly, but I don't know that we have time to get into all of them now, including the DART deal, which we're still working very much to renegotiate. Some significant progress with respect to the iron wood project, with Arnold Palmer, the golf community and so forth.
Thanks,
So,
Sam.
yeah, and there's a whole range of good news things really as far as the economy is concerned that are very close now to being able to start. So, you know, most of most of government's work really, as you well know, takes place outside the Legislative Assembly, and things don't just happen. It takes tremendous amount of effort and time and thought and meetings and to get these things going.
One quick one. On when we look at the Ernst and Young report, and there had been some talk about changing the retirement age in government from 60 to 65, and I don't know whether or not in doing that would conflict with any of the findings or any of the decisions that may come about in relation to reducing the size of the civil service, because certainly by increasing the retirement age to 65 may sort of like throw a monkey wrench into that. But is that still going to take place in terms of amendments to the public service and management law?
Well, yes. I mean, my government wants to increase the retirement age right across the board for the private sector and the public sector from 60 to 65. We're working with the deputy governor now to see how we actually can do that as far as the public service is concerned. But that is definitely one of the initiatives that we want to get through. We think it will have a hugely positive effect. I mean, some of the realities of Cayman life now is that but many people are living well beyond 60 and hale and hearty. I think you're an excellent example of that. You know, you can still knock on 125 miles on a bike and on Sunday and go back and do it all over again on Monday. But you know, people in many cases are at their intellectual height. You know, when they're 60, 65 years old, because they've got a wealth of life experience, and they've developed judgment and which can an experience which can only come. Well, judgment which can only come after having had tremendous experience.
And you being in the legal profession, I would imagine that's one of the reasons why they keep judges on for so long, because of the experience that they garner on the bench.
Well, you know what they say about lawyers, right?
No, tell me.
They say old lawyers never die. They simply lose their briefs. But anyhow, yes, we believe that, and of course, many people now too have the burden of a mortgage and significant commitments, which they need to work beyond 60, not because they necessarily want to, but because with the cost of living in Cayman and the challenges, people need to work. And why are we sidelining, you know, very productive people who, as I say, in many cases are at the height of their intellectual, capacity? For what purpose? For them to sit around waiting for what? It's one thing to retire when you've got lots of money in your hand that you can travel and do all of these things, but the reality for most people in Cayman, the average person, they don't have that kind of a pension or income that allows them to do that. So they need to work. So we are committed to raising the retirement age right across the board to 65, and we hope to get that done during this term.
Okay, and a final message to our listening audience?
No, just to say it's great to be here. There's so many things to talk about. I can't believe how quickly the time has gone by this morning.
I know.
But I'm happy to be back on again in a little while. I'll obviously not come next week Monday, because I'll give the opportunity for some of my other colleagues to come and talk about their issues. But you can rely on me to be here as often as you need me.
Thank you. And the public needs to have access to you, and we give it to them by this medium. Through this medium.
Well, my government is working really hard at trying to make ourselves more accessible to be able to communicate more. So between your show and Talk Today, we hope to be able to talk to people as often as possible. Part of the overall plan as far as Radio Cayman and GIS and CIGTV are concerned is how can we use these government entities, agencies, which are so useful to better communicate with the public about what it is that is going on in government. These are reliable. When the minister, him or herself, is speaking, when the civil servant is speaking, then the public doesn't have to wonder whether or not what's been reported is accurate. Because they can actually hear from the persons concerned and have an opportunity to interact. So we're working at how we can, as I say, better utilize CIGTV, Radio Cayman, and GIS to better communicate government's message. So I just want to thank you again, and thank Radio Cayman, and to thank the listening public for taking the time to listen in and to call in. And I wish for everyone a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Folks, you heard it here on For the Record, Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Premier of the Cayman Islands. We wanted to thank our sponsors today. For the Record was brought to you by Champion House Restaurant 2 and Champion House Cafe. Champion House Restaurant 2 is located on Eastern Avenue, and Champion House Cafe at 1 Butterfield Place, formerly Comart. Champion House, of course, is a family-oriented restaurant where locals, and I always say others, dine. And also, For the Record, is brought to you by the Auto Spa on Godfrey Nixon Way. Stop by Radio Cayman or the Auto Spa and ask for your $5 savings coupon for your next full-service wash. We talked about birthdays early, and I want to give a big shout out to my brother-in-law, Patrick McField. We call him Pat. Used to work at Matt Motors. Today's his birthday. I won't say what his age is because I don't know exactly, but he'd probably prefer I not mention his age as well. But Pat, have a great day. Enjoy your birthday. Folks, I want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone who's less fortunate than we are. If you know of such a person, hold out reach out a helping hand to them in whatever way you can. If you don't know someone who is needy, then I encourage you to give to a worthy charity here in the Cayman Islands. And we always leave you with the words of Mr. Billy Withers, which are, lean on me. Take care. Have a great day. We'll see you on Wednesday morning.
Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the Record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. For the Record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the Record.
For the Record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.